I try to direct your attention to personification because I'm a cognitive linguist, first of all, and I am interested in corpus linguistic methodology or adapting corpus linguistic methodology in my research as well. And this is somehow a pilot study or in a study in progress, of course. So I won't, and I won't be able to give you really systematic and detailed overview and a really elaborated research infrastructure, but rather I will provide you with some basic observations or some so to speak, with the term of one presentation last day, with some abductive hypotheses about how personification behaves in Hungarian as a linguistic fact and as a conceptual structure. Okay, let's begin with an introduction, and let's begin with a really clear definition of personification, treating a non-human entity as if it were a human entity. So from this definition we can have this traditional so-called one-word approach that personification is limited to one word in the discourse, and of course this is that is a personified entity, of course, but personification is confined to only one word. But recent analysis of personification in corpus linguistics and in cognitive linguistics tell us that the majority of personifications in a discourse are constituted as multi-word expressions, which makes the assumption possible that these expressions as multi-word units, maybe they have an inherent network-like structure regarding the components of the expression. So if we consider the components of a multi-word expression as nodes and the grammatical and semantic relationships between these words as edges, maybe we can, so it is only a network-like modeling, but maybe it can tell us something about the tendencies and the patterns of personification. On the other hand, we can observe that if there is a successful individual personification in a discourse, maybe it can motivate additional but similar personifications. So maybe we can talk about the family of personifying expressions. As you can see in the picture, if you think about browsers, web browsers as persons, maybe we can have a family of browsers and really similar kinds of personification. And my assumption would be that if it is the case in online text, we will see if it is the case or not. Maybe there is a network of conceptualizations in the discourse with stronger or weaker connections between them. Okay, so here is my questions. How can we model personifications as network-like structures at different levels of the analysis? And what does this modeling tell us about the conceptual and the linguistic features or behavior of personification in Hungarian? Well, the theoretical background, I try to limit this, and I don't want to go into the details because there is a vast amount of literature on personification in cognitive linguistics and in cognitive modeling, but maybe it deserves attention that in spite of our traditional or conventional assumption that personification is a metaphor, there are other alternative explanations of the conceptual background of the personifying meaning generation. So there are different but related cognitive operations involved in the meaning generation, the dynamic meaning creation of personifying meaning. For example, metonymy or the complex conceptual integration, the so-called blend model elaborated by Gilles Fouconnet and Mark Turner, which is in itself a network. So you can see that this is an illustration, only an illustration. I mean on the right side of the screen. So this conceptual integration so it uses two input spaces and a generic space and a blended so-called integrated space. And maybe we can have the impression that not only meanings are related to each other, but rather complex scenarios. So this example is one fragment from the corpus, and it says that there is a complex scenario of watching a movie with popcorns and for example, an action movie or something like this. And there's another scenario testing a Porsche car model. And there is a complex personifying conceptualization of the whole scenario, which blends the movie scenario and the really simple testing scenario or some scene from this testing test of the Porsche model. So my assumption would be that in personification, it is much more typical to connect two really complex scenarios and integrate them into a personifying meaning. And that's why I assume that there can be a really interesting network-like organization in the background, maybe at different levels. The second point is that the linguistic behavior, the linguistic features of Hungarian personification, and not only Hungarian personifications, is quite varied. According to corpus-based or corpus-driven studies, the part-of-speech categories, the morphosyntactic patterns, and the construction-like behavior of personification is also important. And last but not least, there is a difference in the strengths of personifying meaning regarding the lexical semantic approach of personification. Of course, if, for example, there is a really conventionalized verb, for example, make or give or stand or run, it has a conventionalized usage for non-human entities as well. Although the default agent or the default character the default performer of the process of the verb is a human being, but there is a conventionalized non-human usage of the verb. So there are degrees of the strength of personification as well. So this is the so-called theoretical background of research on personification in contemporary cognitive linguistics. Okay, the other piece of the theoretical background is the so-called mental text approach to the discourse proposed by Givon, which tells us that the representation of the text, the representation of the meaning of the text, is a network of connected nodes. We can consider the entities of the text word as the nodes, and of course, if there are some semantic relationships between these entities, and they are connected to each other. There are sequential and hierarchical relationships between these nodes, so it is not only a network, but rather a multi-layered network. This mental text model, and there can be also idiosyncratic, specific or particular layers of this network as well. Nodes must be connected to other nodes in order to comprehend the text, in order to comprehend the segments of the text, and connections provide mental access to the nodes. Of course, if there are more connections, the node is more stronger, and it is more central regarding the network-like representation of this mental text. If it is a coherent text, it means that we can build this network structure, but of course it is a matter of degree. So the density of this network and the connectedness of the nodes is a matter of degree. My main assumptions are that personification in language has a network-like structure. And personification in a text contributes to this network-like representation of the meaning of the text, or the meaning of the discourse. Okay, some words about the methodological part of this analysis. I'm building, in progress, it is in progress, I build a research corpus. This is the PerSE corpus, which is the abbreviation of the expression personifying structures encoded in the corpus. It contains now online text. It has two subcorpora. One is the total car subcorpus, which contains car reviews, because they have a lot of personifications. It was a surprise to me when I've read the first car reviews, and I'm not a so to speak, not a car fan, so this was quite far from my interest. But anyway, it has these texts contain a lot of personification, and the other subcorpus contains articles on foreign policy. This is the telex subcorpus, it named. I performed automatic pre-processing with the Elmagyar pipeline, and after that I carried out a manual annotation of personifying expressions. In the WebAnno platform, I adapted the identification method elaborated for personifications in English, and this original method was the adaptation of the metaphor identification process, so there is a chain of adaptations regarding the annotation of these figurative expressions. Okay, basically this is a word sense disambiguation task, and I completed it with additional phases or additional steps, so to speak. First of all, I added semantic relationships between the components of a multi-word expression, and secondly, I measured the idiomatic character of the personifying expression on the basis of collocation analysis in a Hungarian web corpus. Okay, in the following, I will demonstrate you the result of a qualitative analysis. So I won't be able to give you any quantitative data because I need more time to transform the whole analysis onto a quantitative pane, but I hope that the results will be interesting to you. I will discuss some micro networks of the multi-word expressions of personification. After that, I will shed some light on the personifications in the mental text, only within one article, within one car review. So it will be, so to speak, a zoom in. And after that, I will give you some overview about the conceptual connections between the source domains of individual personifications in two different texts. The keynote talk today was really useful for me as well. So I learned a lot from this keynote talk, and I can admit that the first and the third aspect will be so-called modeling personification with network, but I do hope that regarding the second aspect, network is not only a model of personification, but rather the exact structure of the phenomenon. Okay. Below you can see this picture, which is a screenshot from the WebAnno, and maybe you can realize that there are dark blue labels, and these are the manually added labels to the words of the text. And you can see also that there are a lot of arrows which symbolize the connections between the nodes, and the blue arrows are automatically added to the words of the text as a morphosyntactic analysis, whereas the red arrows were manually assigned to the components of the personification regarding the semantic relationship between, for example, a verb and the nominal arguments of the verb. So this is the first example is a really basic micronetwork which contains a personifying verb and nominal arguments, and maybe the central node is the verb which connect the two nominal arguments in a basic personifying scenario. Regarding the second example, it's a bit more complex because, you know, there is only one personified entity. This is the wind, but there are two personifying components. The first is a verb and the second is an adverb. So maybe there is a node with the nominal component of the expression, and there are two scenarios, the whispering scenario and another physical motion scenario regarding the behavior of the wind. Okay, in this third example, it is from a foreign policy article in which Italy is the partner of the NATO and Ukraine. This is the Meloni government. It is about the Meloni government. And we can see that there is a nominal predicate, which is the personifying part of the expression, and there are nominal arguments. So maybe there is a central node as a nominal predicate. Something is a partner of something else, and there are three nominal arguments: Italy, the NATO, and Ukraine, that are personified. The personification in this case is not so strong, so being a partner of something is not a really creative kind of personification. And maybe you can observe that this is a metonymic personification because Italy refers to the Italian government, or maybe the Italian citizens, and so on and so forth. Okay. And last but not least, it is a really complex micro-network of personifying meaning generation in which there are more than one personifying components of the expression and more than one personified entities. The V8, which is a Porsche model, and it has a complex personifying network around it. And I try to give a really basic and really simple, maybe naive representation of this one. So the V8 begins to press, and this is the angry V8. So there is another personifying adjective in this whole expression. And of course, there are other nominal arguments which, so to speak, contributes to the scenario, but they aren't personified, and they do not contribute to the personifying meaning generation. So it is an open question, what can we do, how can we handle these arguments, which are obviously the component, so they are the components of the complex multi-word expression, but they do not significant or do not prominent regarding the personifying meaning generation. I cannot answer this question at the present phase of the research, but I hope that there will be maybe suggestions or ideas later. Okay, moving on to the mental text. So this is only the first 10 paragraphs of only one car review, and I collected all the personifying expressions or all those components which contribute to personification from paragraph to paragraph. And so this is, again, a really basic and of course, really chaotic representation of how can we observe relationships not only in paragraphs, but between paragraphs as well. Thank you very much. But I've learned through this conference that we can use another tool. This is the Gephi, and I made my first attempts to visualize something in Gephi last evening, so yesterday evening, and I made this more sophisticated representation. Maybe it is, again, maybe it is a basic and not so, so to speak, not so clear, but and intuitive also. But I think that that it can be observed in this diagram that there are local networks of personifying meaning generation. For example, the NGS button, which can perform a lot of things. But also, this kind of local network is connected to the extra knowledge of the N version. And of course, it is connected to the system. And of course, it is connected to the equipment, and so on and so forth. So you can see that there are darker edges which represent the relationships, the sequential relationships in a paragraph, and you can see lighter edges which represent the relationships between paragraphs. Okay, so maybe it can. So a conclusion can be drawn from this picture that yes, personifying meaning generation contributes to the coherence of the discourse, and not only on the local level, but also on the more global level, in a sequential and also in a hierarchical way. And in the last minute of my presentation, I would like to demonstrate some preliminary results of the conceptual organization of personification. This is the same car review, which has two main motivating domains of personification. Car is an intentional agent, and car is a physical worker with a human body. And there are also more specific domains. And if we compare it to one article about the Italian government, we can see it is a more modest and not so creative network of conceptual domains, because in this domain, the basic operation of conceptualization is a metonymic conceptualization. The PerSE stands for the political agents. To conclude all of this, personifications frequently have network-like grammatical structures, and this network modeling maybe can shed some light on the complex behavior, the complex features of personification. They contribute to the semantic network of the textual meaning, and the conceptual background has some reoccurring and overlapping conceptual domains of frames on the different levels of specification. Here are the references, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.